Good afternoon. It's 3 o'clock. Good afternoon, it's 3 o'clock, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. Are my commissioners here? All right.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll begin with the roll call of commission members. Please, after I call your name, if I hear present, and confirm that you can see and hear me. Commissioner Hughes.
Present, I can see and hear you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ponce.
And I can see and hear you.
Thank you. And then we'll begin, and I'm here, of course, and we have a quorum, and we'll begin with a statement. In 2020, Governor Pritzker signed Public Act 101-0640, making certain amendments to the Open Meetings Act so that we, along with other boards and commissions, can continue to host virtual meetings during the COVID-19 public health emergency, provided that certain conditions are met. One of those conditions is that Chairman Wong of the Commission on Chicago Landmarks determines that an in-person meeting of the Commission on Chicago Landmarks and its Permit Review Committee are not practical or prudent. Chairman Wong has determined pursuant to Section 7E2 of the Open Meetings Act that an in-person meeting of this Commission on Chicago Landmarks and its Permit Review Committee is not practical or prudent. He has also determined pursuant to Section 7E5 that because of the disaster declared by the governor, it is infeasible for at least one member of the Commission on Chicago Landmarks or its chief administrative officer or its chief legal officer to be physically present at the meeting place for either meeting in as much as there is no physical meeting place. Pursuant to a resolution adopted by the Commission on Chicago Landmarks on June 4th, 2020, regarding the chairman's emergency rulemaking powers, Chairman Wong issued emergency rules governing the conduct of remote public commission meetings and provisions for remote public participation effective February 18th, 2022. These rules are posted on the Commission's website. In line with these emergency rules, today's regular Permit Review Committee meeting is a virtual meeting being simulcast to the general public via live streaming. Permit Review Committee meetings have been held virtually since May of 2020. Meetings are structured to minimize chances for technical difficulties. Members of the general public have been encouraged to submit written statements in advance of the meeting, and these have been posted on the Commission's website and are available for public view during the virtual meeting at www.chicago.gov/CCO. Per the emergency rules, verbal statements for general public for all agenda items will take place at the beginning of the meeting so all those wishing to speak at today's meeting should be signed into the Zoom meeting at this time. Before we hear staff presentations on agenda items, we ask to hear from property owners or applicants and their teams. We will open the floor to members of the general public who wish to comment about the items to be heard on today's agenda. Members of the public wishing to comment should use the raise hand function of Zoom to indicate that they wish to speak. Members of the public not using a smartphone or computer and instead phoning in to the meeting, just press *9 to activate the raise hand function and do the same to deactivate it. I or the meeting facilitator will call out the names one by one and unmute those people. Once unmuted, speakers should give their full name and organization, if any, they represent. Each speaker is allocated 3 minutes to speak. Once all members of the general public wishing to comment have been given the opportunity to do so, we will go through the agenda. I would ask for owners and applicants and their representatives, as well as aldermen, to wait to speak until after staff presentations have been made on their agenda item. All right, so I'd like to go through the agenda items to allow for public comment at this time. We only have 2 today. The first item on is item 1, which is the project at 111 North State, the Marshall Field and Company building. Are there members of the general public wishing to speak on this item? Seeing one, seeing a couple. Is it Preservation Chicago?
Hello there, Adam Natensham. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi there, thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of Ward Miller, who was unable to be present during this portion of the meeting today. I'm Director of Operations for Preservation Chicago. When we learned recently of the additional signage proposed for numerous locations on the Marshall Field store, now Macy's, we have concerns that this designated Chicago landmark is becoming a billboard for the current tenant, which is inappropriate for a designated Chicago landmark. We counted current signage locations and we were shocked by the amount of existing signage already on the building's facade. There are 14 existing canvas canopies on State Street. This number doubles to 48 signs during the holidays when there are 14 additional Macy's signs hanging on the second floor flagpoles. On Randolph Street, there are 12 additional sign locations. On Wabash, 14. On Washington Street, there are 10. So that brings the total, including the holiday signs, to 62, which is an astounding number. If you add the signage on the doors, it brings the total to 129 signage locations. Again, this is on a designated Chicago landmark building of significant importance. With this being said, do we really need an additional 18 banners and additional bronze plaques added to and affixed to this historic building and Chicago landmark? We know of no other Chicago building and landmark with as many signs, and just wanted to share this observation with you and others at DPD and the Permit Review Committee of the Commission on Chicago Landmarks. We are of the opinion that more signage will not equate to more knowledge of the store's name or location, noting the other existing 129 signage locations, and this will make this incredibly important Chicago landmark perhaps resemble something more like a New York Times Square billboard. At the end of the day, this would be much like the large and vast corner billboard on the Herald Square flagship in New York. It's our opinion that this large and vast additional signage would adversely impact the Marshall Field landmark building on State Street and one of Chicago's stellar buildings and famous landmarks. We point out that the former Carson Perry Scott store, now the Target store, has very limited signage, and it's very appropriate and respectful of the street and the landmark designation. Therefore, we request your consideration not to approve the additional banners and not to approve the additional 8 bronze plaques to be mounted above the Marshall Field's bronze plaques. These additional plaques will adversely impact the historic building while also impacting existing bronze letters, noting the street name as well. With that, I wish to thank you for your consideration of these adverse impacts to one of Chicago's most recognized landmarks. Thank you.
Thank you. We now hear from Mr. James Mckay.
Unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank goodness. Thank you very much. And I want to thank the commissioners for the opportunity to speak today. I don't like to read my resume, but my title is a little nebulous with regards to this matter, so I will fill you in as quickly as possible in the 3 minutes and only a few seconds. My name is James Mckay. I live here in Chicago, Illinois. I've taught architecture and design for 25 of the past 30 years at several different universities. And Marshall Field and Company building is an area of my expertise, and I've been sought for interviews from local papers to the Tribune, have appeared on the History Channel, the BBC World Service, New York Times, talking about the building and its architectural features. And so I also informally organize a grassroots group of people who call themselves Fields fans, and we organize lectures and events promoting the history of the Marshall Field and Company building and the store. We interview former executives, etc. We've even worked to put together proposals from other interested parties who wanted to approach Macy's and buying the store and the trademark. But I am not connected with Macy's. I do speak at the Macy's stockholders meeting as a stockholder. But I'm basing my comments simply on what I know is the existing context and what I've seen from the agenda, as well as a fact I learned from a member that there's intentions to add 8 plaques at the corners of the buildings. And I echo many of the comments, the same concerns that Preservation Chicago listed. But before I go further, I also want to applaud Macy's for replacing the awnings. They're 16 years old, they are tattered, and anything they can do to maintain and keep up the building and its stewardship is applauded. I am concerned about the number of signs as Preservation Chicago listed, and I totally agree with that. And moreover, I understand the canopies need to be resurfaced. The signage, the building itself is an advertisement for the building. People know what it is. And so for that matter, adding all these additional signs is not necessary. especially concerned about the addition of 8 plaques at the 4 corners. Many people come to the corners to have their photos taken under the clock in front of the plaques. I was there Sunday for Sunday on State, and in the 20 minutes I was there, I observed 5 different parties coming by for those photos. And whether you like Macy's or not, people come because it was historically Macy's, and they celebrate their weddings, their anniversaries, and other meaningful things they have with that. So with the many signs, I question all that, understanding I don't know the context. Moreover, I'm concerned about a bigger precedence this sets. If we have all this additional signage there, what other historic buildings will have all this massive signage added? So it seems to me it would be overkill and distract from the historic iconography of the existing landmark plaques and clocks. And so I think the star, which is a symbol of New York, is inappropriate. And so I'm concerned about the addition, and I appreciate your review and look forward to seeing the plans. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments. Any other members of the public wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'm going to move to agenda item number 2, which is the project at 4441 South Ellis in the North Kenwood District. Are there any members of the general public who wish to speak on this item? I see none at the moment. Seeing none, I believe that's all the members of the general public who have indicated that they wish to speak on the agenda items for today. Therefore, this concludes the public comment portion of the meeting, and we will now go through the agenda, and we will begin with the approval of the minutes from our previous meeting, the regular meeting of August 4th, 2022. And I'd like to request a motion to approve those minutes from August 4th, 2022. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Commissioner Ponce made a motion. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Commissioner Hughes. And I'm a yes, and the motion carries unanimously. The minutes will be posted on the commission's website. And we will go to the first project, which is 111 North State, the Marshall Field and Company building, proposed building signage, including new plaques, banners, and the resurfacing of existing canopies and awnings. And Joyce Ramos has the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Emily Barton, the staff member who worked on this project on the agenda, is not able to attend this meeting. So I'll be presenting her 2 projects today on her behalf. The Marshall Field and Company building occupies a full city block bordered by State Street, Wabash Avenue, Washington Avenue, and Randolph Avenue. Macy's occupies floors 1 through 7, with floors 8 through 13 serving as office space under a different ownership. Late last year, the applicant reached out to explore and expand signage options that express the store's current branding. The applicant is proposing to update and expand their current signage, which is currently limited to awnings, canopies, and storefront display windows. As part of the updated program, Macy's is proposing new signage on all 4 building facades, including new banners, corner plaques, and awning signage, and canopy signage. There we go. In addition to the significant building features, which are listed here on the slide, the designation ordinance states that as part of the commission's review of the work, the commission shall take into consideration the unique operational concerns of a retail department store to the extent such consideration is not otherwise inconsistent with the intent of the Chicago Landmark Ordinance. These concerns include the need for flexibility in the store's physical environment so that opportunities for innovation and change in the successful marketing and promotion of store merchandise may be preserved and encouraged, and to incorporate an ever-changing array of merchandising displays, fixtures, and structures, including signs, lighting, audio and visual displays, and other devices involved in the day-to-day operations of a successful retail department store and historically consistent with retail operations in the building. The applicant is proposing 18 new canvas banners distributed around the building, marked on the plan in circles, in the red circles. The banners will be 12 feet tall and 13 feet wide and are proposed to be mounted on poles approximately 1 foot off the building. The banners are simple in design with just the word Macy's and their star logo. The locations have been chosen to minimize visual clutter while maintaining symmetry. The main State Street elevation along with the Washington and Randolph elevations will each have 4 banners, while the Wabash elevation will have 6 banners. The applicant is proposing 2 different mounting details for the banners, one for the southeast corner of the building, which features different facade conditions, and one for the remaining elevations. In both instances, the applicant is proposing to install the banners mechanically with anchor bolts penetrating the stone units on the facade. They claim that this attachment location yields a superior positive attachment to the building and eliminates the potential for stone unit edge damage from potential movement of the longer bolts through the joints. Because the stone units in question are historic and any drill hole through the masonry will outlast any signage, staff recommends that the mechanical penetrations be located within mortar joints wherever possible to avoid damaging the stone. The applicant is also proposing to install new bronze corner plaques in 8 locations, directly above the existing historic Marshall Field and Company plaques. These will be approximately 6 feet by 2 feet wide, matching the width of the historic plaques and mechanically fastened to the facade. The applicant is also proposing to reface the existing 4 canopies with simple new signage along the edges. The existing window awning frames are proposed to be retained and recovered. Back to the canopies. The canopies will have a signage along the edges, and shown here on the left is the existing canopy signage, and on the bottom right shows the proposed new signage for the canopies. And there are 14 existing window awning frames that are proposed to be retained and recovered with new signage showing the simplified branding. As none of the new proposed signage is obscuring decorative features and will be removable in the future, staff recommends approval of these other signage locations. The Alderman's office has reviewed the proposal and has no objections, and a letter of support from the Chicago Loop Alliance was included in your packet. This concludes my presentation, and the architect is also here if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Questions from commissioners for Joyce before we talk to the applicant? Okay, let's hear from the applicant. Is it Clark Christensen?
Yes. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Clark Christensen with Antunovich Associates. Our firm has been working with Macy's on the State Street building for many years. We were the architect of record for the consolidation effort that Macy's went through, as was stated earlier. And we are very pleased to be part of this next phase of Macy's continued presence at this Chicago landmark at 111 North State. We have, as Joyce mentioned, we've been working with Emily Barton and other staff members at the Historic Preservation staff for almost a year now to fine tune the proposal, to listen to comments from staff. We heard comments from the Alderman's office as well. And as a result, the proposal that you see here is admittedly scaled down from what was originally proposed, but at the end of the day, we again working with my colleagues at my colleagues at Macy's, we believe we've hit on a good mix of appropriate new signage, appropriately located, and appropriately sized for the building, which expresses the current and in many ways new branding effort for the store. So we are encouraged by the progress we've made. We definitely are looking forward to positive review by the commission. And I'm here and available to answer any questions you may have about the proposed locations and signage types that we've proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Hughes.
Hi, and Joyce, if you could bring up the slide that shows kind of the connection details
Sure.
of how the stone is going to be penetrated. I wholeheartedly agree with the staff's recommendations about penetrating the mortar joints instead of the stone, but it does look like there's going to be stone penetrations. Can you speak to that a little bit, please?
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, oh, go ahead.
Oh,
Go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
Clark.
No,
No, go. I'm probably going to say the same thing. I just know that just in your detailed drawings, you have the bolts kind of penetrating, right in the middle of the stone units, and what Commissioner Hughes is trying to say is, we should try to locate them more towards
Right.
the mortar joints so they don't damage the historic material.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was going to ask, has there been any exploratory measures to understand if you could just put the signs up with solely mortar joints connections as opposed to penetrating the stone?
so the answer to that question is at present, we have not gone so far as to do selectively damaging test patterns at these locations. We developed this based on our past experience with mounting locations, and what it comes down to is as Joyce mentioned a few minutes ago, what we have just found that there's just a better long-term mechanical connection when the connection's made more in the center part of a stone unit. Again, providing the stone unit is sound and not in and of itself deteriorated or damaged in some way. And the other component to this is, well, and I believe someone spoke to this already, when it comes time for a new scheme and perhaps the banner is no longer desired, the manner by which the holes can be repaired and remediated is much more straightforward when it comes to these circular holes on the face of a facade, as opposed to trying to repair edge damaged conditions, which in order to do those properly, sometimes the unit itself needs to be replaced. So what we were trying to do is just find a way to be consistent and solid in our approach. So that's, I know that's similar to what
I think I've seen
Joyce
it.
mentioned, but
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, so in the future, if those signs were to ever come down, we would be looking at patching the holes that were penetrated as opposed to replacing the unit?
Well, I guess it comes down to, if the Macy's branding scheme, no longer includes banners as a signage type, then yes, the mechanical attachment via the epoxy bolts would come down. Now, if we're talking about just simply swapping out the banners, and I'm not trying to confuse the issue.
Then the connection stays and
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So for instance, if Macy's has a next rebranding concept, or if they want to, come up with something that is more State Street oriented and Washington Street is a little different, or they want to call out certain apartments, what have you. I mean, it all falls into that category of, having the flexibility to be shifting with the times. And so to that point, this has been designed such that the banner fabric itself can be taken off and the arms stay. And only when the arms themselves are determined, the banner type is determined no longer to be desirable, then that would come off, and then the holes would be patched. And there are really great products in the market that allow for patching of cleanly drilled stone units that can allow for very close matching in terms of texture, graining, color, things like that.
Okay, well, Mr. Clark, that's what we're going to be looking for if these signs ever come down.
Understood.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. So any other questions, Commissioner Ponce? Or anyone?
Yeah,
guess-
I
yeah,
wanted
go
to
ahead.
add, just honestly, my initial reaction to when I read the packet is very similar to the public comments. And I know we're here and, staff recommends there aren't any adverse effects to the landmark, right? But I'm looking, that was my initial reaction, is to the amount of signage, and the building represents Macy's, and precedent for other buildings on State Street or anywhere else in the building. I appreciate the example of the Parson Henry Scott building as well, where it's very simple and beautiful. Concerned about setting a precedent for other buildings. I agree with Commissioner Hughes and the conversation that her concerns that she has brought up. What does it look like down the road? And I'm curious, as far as what is being said for the public comment. And the need for those banners. So
I think you're
curious.
going. What did you say after public comment? I think we lost you for a second.
That was my initial reaction, and I'm also just curious from the architect as to the response to that.
Well, I would honestly defer to Macy's representatives, who I understood are listening in. I'm not sure if they were engaged as participants in this particular discussion, so I don't want to speak on their behalf for some of their sort of corporate strategies and whatnot. But what I would say is, and what I would say is this: we worked quite diligently, internally with Macy's representatives to come up with a scheme that hit their needs. And we also we very carefully reviewed the capacity of this building to absorb signage. And I don't use that word lightly, but this just to put this in the context, this building is a full block wide, and at present, only has signage at that canopy awning level and down. And so, there are thousands of square feet of stone and other, architectural materials on this building, which don't have any signage whatsoever. I am not saying that anyone has any concept of just turning this into a Times Square. That is not the approach that we have taken, and nor do I believe we'll ever take. But I would just like to just kind of rest back on the concept that we carefully studied this, and I don't think that 18 more signs, 18 more banners on a building that is 4 city block faces represents a dangerous or negative precedent. If anything, what I would like to say is, and Joyce, if you shared the slide earlier with out of our package, I believe, or maybe you didn't, but we put together a collection of images of this building over the course of the 20th century, in which, you know, signage and other celebratory flags and whatnot were attached to the building. And the building is not overwhelmed by the number of signs and whatnot. So, you know, it's our take that we've hit on an appropriate number. We believe the placement is appropriate, and fundamentally, you know, there is a reversible quality to this. And you know, at the end of the day, we feel that this is an appropriate approach to how to increase visibility and to adapt with the current times and present Macy's new and current branding on an edifice that is a very, very generous canopy, or not canopy. Canvas is the word I'm looking for. Very few buildings are this large, and I don't doubt that this building's ability to gracefully absorb 18 additional banners. Thank you.
The signage proposal that Clark referred to was included in your packet that showed all the historic photos of the Marshall Fields building. I just wanted to add that staff does understand the need for commercial establishments to advertise. We don't want the number or the size of the signs to adversely impact the historic architectural character of this landmark building. And like Clark said, you know, considering the size of this building, you know, with block-long elevations, you know, the banner locations have been chosen to minimize visual clutter while still maintaining symmetry. And, you know, for an example, on the State Street elevation, I mean, there are 4 banners, you know, on that elevation. You know, it's 18 total, you know, but each elevation, and then this rendering kind of depicts what that would look like too.
I see Commissioner Hughes, you have your hand up. Let me ask one quick thing. Is the corner plaque landmarked? Is that part of the?
No, so part of the significant features of this, oops, I'm sorry, wrong way. These are the significant features of this building. So the great clocks located at the corners of the building are included, but the plaques themselves are not included as the significant features of this designation. So the plaques are not significant features, but I just want to note that the Marshall Fields plaques will remain in place. They will not be removed. They will not be covered, damaged, altered, or obscured by the new Macy's plaques. I can't remember where they're showed, but you know, they will be installed directly above the historic Marshall Field and Company plaques, just at the corners.
Thank you. Commissioner Hughes, did you still have a question?
Yeah, I did. And mine was about the plaques too for Joyce. Is it common? I would assume that the plaque isn't landmarked because it came online later. Is it common for us to come back later and then landmark the plaques as well? Or, and also, is it common once the building has a plaque for other retailers, for instance, to have plaques above that? I mean, I've seen plaques, but not, usually it's a bunch of retailers, right? With that's plaquing together. And in this case, it's like a significant plaque stating this particular building is what it is. And then the retailer, which is very different.
Well, I guess we could consider the plaques. I mean, largely the designation does include all exterior elevations. But like I said before, the plaques, the new proposed new plaques themselves will not damage or cover or obscure the Marshall Field and Company plaques.
And then, thank you, Joyce. And I had another question for the owner. I'm sorry, for the architect. Did you guys, you know, I know that you're the experts on signage, but was there at any point, I know you worked extensively with Macy's, did you guys include any community inputs? You know, a survey perhaps of shoppers or people surrounding the property, of whether or not the additional signage is helpful for wayfinding. Like I'm just curious to know, was there any exterior inputs into your design of this?
So the best way that I can answer that is I don't know if Macy's internally ran any focus group studies for its Chicago shoppers. What I would say is that I know that in working with them, they don't arrive at signage type and signage placement lightly and without an awareness of the positive impact that signage, the right signage at the right locations will generate. So while I can't speak to whether or not they ran focus groups or not, like I said, I would like to say that what I understand is that they definitely look carefully at this. But what I would like to respond to directly on this question, Commissioner, is we did work very diligently with public representatives in the form of Alderman Riley's office and his chief of staff, as well as the Chicago Loop Alliance and their design review committee. And in both cases, they are charged and take charge of being, stewards and eyes on the street, if you will, for not only this building, but the numerous other great examples of commercial architecture, whether they're block long or only a couple of bays wide. All these proposals do go through them. And so, we, as you saw in your packet, the response was positive. So we would take that as being a sign that the general public perception has been addressed from the point of view of we did the public outreach from the point of view of those who do represent the public on behalf of either the Chicago merchants or as an elected official, Alderman Riley's office and his chief of staff.
Thank you. Commissioner Hughes, does that answer your question? Okay.
I just have one last comment.
Oh, sure.
And I just thought it was an excellent question by Commissioner Hughes. And I was thinking, about the brand of Macy's. It's really recognized globally, and people from so many across the world. It's an icon, right? People go to Macy's, and especially in the holidays. And I just wanted to point that out. And also tell you that, I'm sure that you did not take this lightly, the placement of the banners and everything. But the Macy's brand location, I think it's a recognized brand. Just adding to the amount of signage and my agreement with the public comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Ponce. Are there any other questions for the applicant before we go to discussion? Seeing none. I guess any further discussion on this item? I guess for me, I feel I understand the landscape for retail and the need for signage, and I understand all the concerns about the penetrations. Either way, it seems like you damage the stone to do those, but I also understand the need for it in the retail and the long elevation, everything. And I guess ultimately those can be repaired. But I am having a hard time with the corner plaque. It feels like it takes away from what I feel is an iconic piece of the building, even though it's a sign. And so, I guess I'm curious whether commissioners feel, or if they feel strongly as well, or and also this was something that was brought up. So for me, I'm inclined to accept, agree with all the recommendations, but I sort of, and I know that there's a lot of work that has been done here on, the placement of the signage, but for me, when I look at this, it is very distracting, the image on the screen.
Well, staff can continue to work with the applicant. I don't know if maybe like the placement or like the size of these plaques at the corners can be something that could be revised. And we can also check back in with, one of the commissioners if they want to work with us on this. And then kind of revisit this at a later date.
But are you saying, sorry, I just wanted to ask, are you, Commissioner Yankovic, are you saying that the plaque is the problem, or that just the size and the dominance?
It feels cluttered to me, and it feels like it takes, like it does, like that's an iconic, I know it's the sign itself is not landmark, but the elevation is, and I feel like that is like that's the Marshall Field building. I feel like when you see that, and it's just, I know it's Macy's now, but that sign is retained for, I guess, a reason. And for me, I just agree with some of the public comments that were made that, there's a lot of signage here, and I think we, it sounds like most of us agree that we would approve most of these. But for me, this one just feels like, do we really need this sign? I would actually recommend, put out a motion that we adopt the staff recommendation and exclude these signs from the approval.
And I would second that recommendation.
Third.
So we've adopted the modified staff recommendation to
Okay.
approve all the signs aside from the corner signs or plaques.
Okay.
Okay, and that motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, and good luck with the project.
Thank you,
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time and consideration today.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is 4441 South Ellis in the 4th Ward, Alderman King, North Kenwood District. The proposed new construction of 2-story single-family residence with roof deck and rear detached 3-car garage. And Joyce, yep.
Me again.
Yes, you have this one
Thank
as
you
well.
again, Mr. Chairman. The subject lot is located mid-block on Ellis between 44th Street and 45th Street. The owners were able to purchase the lot through the city's adjacent neighbors land acquisition program and are now proposing a new single-family residence. The North Kenwood district is non-contiguous. However, the entire east side of the block where the subject property is located is included in the boundary of the designation. Sandbar maps from 1895 show that the subject block was entirely filled with standard size lots and lot-to-lot line row houses. The existing conditions have changed in the years since, and the subject vacant lot has has attached row houses to the south and a standalone row house to the north. The lot has a 2-foot building encroachment at the north end of the lot, making the remaining 14-foot wide lot too narrow for a single-family residence. The owners were able to purchase this lot directly to the south for a new lot width of approximately 32 feet. The applicant is proposing a standalone property. The front setback is approximately 21 feet 10 inches, matching the existing setbacks of the historic row houses directly south. Because of the 2-foot building encroachment to the north, the subject lot is approximately 32 foot wide. With an unusual lot width for the district, the applicant is proposing a 20-foot wide building with a 3-foot side yard to the south and a larger 8-foot 6-inch side yard to the north. While most side yards along the street are 0 feet, other properties in the multiple property district are lone houses with substantial side yards. Because of this uniquely sized lot for this stretch of the district, staff recommends approval as proposed. The overall proposed height of the building is 30 feet 8 inches tall, matching the existing predominant roof lines to the north and south. The floor-to-floor heights are approximately 10 foot 6 inches, aligning with the neighboring building proportions. The porch is proposed to be 5 foot tall, compatible with the other porches in the district. The proposed building has been designed to be compatible with its neighboring row houses. The architect referenced elements found on traditional gravestones, such as covered porches and pyramid roof bays, and integrated them in the design for the new construction. The building is asymmetrical, as is common with row houses in the district, with a covered entrance porch and stoop. The applicant's design is compatible with both adjacent buildings and the district as a whole, and staff recommends approval as proposed. The front facade of this project is proposed to be faced with Renaissance cast stone with a textured rock face veneer that closely matches the rusticated limestone of traditional gravestone row houses. The side elevations are proposed to be clad in a dark gray, smooth face fiber cement siding with a finished return of the front facade extending approximately 6 feet on both sides. Siding is not a typical material for side elevations in the district, as most are constructed of common brick masonry. Because of this, the substantial side yard to the north and the vacant lot to the south, staff recommends the finished masonry return to be extended to 15 feet, as the side elevations will be more highly visible. Staff further recommends that the siding color to be revised to a lighter, warmer tone to better blend with the front facade and to diminish the visual impact of the siding. All of the proposed materials are compatible with the neighboring buildings and the district, and staff recommends approval of all proposed materials with the condition that the masonry samples be provided to historic preservation staff with the permit application. A letter of support from Alderman King was included in your packet, and the architect is also here if you have any questions. And this concludes the presentation. Please let us know if you have any questions.
Thanks so much, Joyce. Any questions for Joyce before going to the applicant? Seeing none, let's hear from the applicant. Is it Alex Polychuk?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. We had been commissioned to work on this project originally in 2004. And then for some reason, and we got permits, and for some reason, owner was not able to purchase city lot. And practically 15 years later, she approached us again, and we started to redesign this house. We worked close with the owner. Project was presented to community. It was warmly accepted. We showed this project to North Kentwood Committee. It also was accepted, and aldermen support this project. So our client is a long-time resident of this area, and she's looking forward to move in this house finally. Yeah, and we work close with Emily Barton and incorporated all comments, and we agree that siding not exactly represent what we thought in mind. It's just rendering. It's darker, it will be lighter, and we completely agree that stone has to be extended another 10 feet deeper.
Okay, great. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none. Points of discussion. No, I think it's just clear that you know, there's some. We're happy to hear that you're going to extend the masonry, and I think that you can tell that a lot of detail has been thought into the elevation. So I appreciate that. Do we have a motion to adopt the staff recommendation?
We do, and I too appreciate that there was a community process in place and that you guys agreed with the staff recommendations. I motion us to accept the staff recommendations as is.
All right, Commissioner Hughes made a motion. Do we have a second?
Yes, absolutely. I agree. Second.
All right. Commissioner Ponce has a second, and I'm a yes. And the motion carries unanimously. Congratulations, a nice project.
Thank you.
And that is all for today. There is no further business. So I'd like to request a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Commissioner Hughes
Okay.
made a motion.
I second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Ponce, and I'm a yes, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you all so much for your time and for your service, and thank you everybody for the meeting. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day and week. Bye-bye.
To you all.
you.